I've heard the 50mm described as if you have lenses for eyeballs. Hey, what's up you guys? Nick here. For those of you who are new to my channel, I am a professional photographer. I've been shooting professionally for approximately 3 years now, though I've had a camera in my hand for the last 15 or 16 ever since I was in high school. And for those of you who have returned for another video, thank you guys so much. Make sure you subscribe. So, first and foremost, I might sound a little nasally tonight, a little more than normal. I have a bit of a head cold, but I really wanted to make this video, and that's because I did a shoot on Monday and I realized how much I love and how little we've talked about the Nifty 50. Now, I've done a review on this lens. This is the Yongnou f1.8 that I have, but I never really talked about why I love the 50mm and why I think every photographer should have the Nifty 50 in their kit. So the first thing I want to start with is the Nifty 50 is probably the most affordable lens that you can start out with to really start making a difference in your photography. This Yongnou here ranges from $69 to $89. The Canons and the Nikors or the Nikons never really go over $200, and you actually get a really fast lens for a really low amount of money. Like this one's in f1.8. I've seen them as low as f1.2, and at that point in time you get over that $200 mark. So at that price point, you're getting an f1.8 lens, so a really fast lens, real wide open. It's relatively super sharp. This one softens around the edges at f1.8, though the Nikon one that I have actually is pretty sharp throughout almost the whole range of f-stops, and that one was about $200, I believe. On top of it being a reasonable price, it's super light. In my review, which I'll link right here, I talk about the weight of this lens and how it's easy to carry around on your camera all day, and it really is. It's a great hiking lens. It's great for street photography. I've used it in the studio all day long before, and you can't really feel it because of how light the lens is. Now the Nikon one, which is a better built lens, is also extremely light, and the Canon ones and the Sigma ones that I've looked at are all very light lenses. The third thing I want to discuss is the 50mm is a nice in-between, and actually I've heard the 50mm described as if you have lenses for eyeballs. It's so close to the way that you already see that it's really easy to pick up and get your shots. Now with a zoom lens, if you're like 100mm and you see a cool shot and you bring it up, it's gonna be different than how you see it. That's one of the things that makes the 50mm so great, is when you're out doing street photography or landscape, if you see a shot, you bring up the camera to line it up, it's almost exactly what you see is what you capture with the lens. It makes composition really easy, especially as a beginner. And on the other side of that, if you're using like a 35mm or the 10 to 20mm that I love using, you get a little bit of lens distortion, especially around the edges. And I'll actually show an example of that from Monday's shoot. And then I'll show an example of the 50mm as a portrait lens. And these are both pictures of Coda. So as you can see, there's some lens distortion around the edges when you're using that real wide angle lens. And actually you might be able to see it in the video because I shoot with a 10 to 20mm lens. So you might see the lens distortion around me. And it's not to say you're creating a bad photo with lens distortion. It's all about what you want to create. Now the 50mm or the Nifty 50, I really love that word, Nifty 50, is a prime lens. So there's no zoom on this. So you become the zoom. In order to get a more close-up photo, you have to physically move closer. And if you want a picture with more in it, you got to back up. And most of these 50mm come at that really fast f-stop. And I'll link the f-stop video here so you guys can check that out and know what I'm talking about. But it gives you that bokeh effect shooting at those real low f-stops, those f1.2s, the 1.4s, the 1.8s, even 2.2. And you get some amazing shots. And it really helps you step up your game for a really low price. I'll actually link the Yongnou in the description below, as well as the Canon and the Nikon and a Sigma and a Tamron, because Tamron makes really good lenses too. I have a Tamron zoom lens that I love for landscape photography. Now that's the last thing I want to talk about, versatility, because this one sits right kind of in the middle, between your wide angles and your more zoom portrait-y style lenses. This one's kind of like the X-wing of lenses. It does a really good job at everything. Personally, I use it mostly for portrait photography. This is my go-to portrait lens, especially for headshots. It really makes the eyes pop. It catches that catch light really well. It's a beautiful lens. I'll show some examples, you guys, as we're talking. But because it's right in the middle, you know, it does great for landscape photography. 50mm, you have a short enough where you're not zoomed in a lot, that you can really capture a lot of the landscape about you, and that goes with street photography. Now, what's nice about this for street photography is because it's a really small lens, and I'll actually show you on my D5100, is the lens doesn't protrude too much. It's not invasive when you're doing street photography. Even my 10 to 20mm on there, because it's a zoom lens, it has a longer body than the Yongnou does. So as you can see how short that is. When you're out and about doing street photography, especially in a crowded area, you don't want to be intrusive. You don't want to be people's faces. And this lens does a great job of letting you come up, take your photos, and bring the camera back down without being intrusive, without going too far out. And it applies great for capturing a quick shot. You see a shot, you're walking down the street and you see the perfect shot, and you're like, oh man, that's great. You bring it up, and because it's like your eyeball inside of a lens, you don't have more zoom or less zoom when taking that shot, so it almost lines up perfectly with what you saw, and it helps composing those images again. I know I repeat that, but composition is so important to photography, and that's what this lens gives you. It gives you the opportunity to compose with your eyes as you begin to learn to see the world as a photographer. Now, as you get better with that and you move into a zoom lens or a more wide-angle lens, you can start learning how to compose those shots in that manner. But as you learn that, the 50mm is a great way to get started with that. So I just spent like 2.5 minutes trying to get this back on, so this just cut to me holding this. But yeah, so those are some of the reasons that I really recommend that the 50mm lens, and it doesn't have to be a Yongnou, be your first investment lens. The weight, it's really small, it's compact, it's a prime lens, and it doesn't weigh very much. So if you're using a camera strap, it's not really weighing down on your neck. If you use the setup I use, it's not really weighing down on your shoulders. If you're going on a hike or you're doing street photography, you don't really notice that the lens is there because it's so light. It weighs a lot less than the body does, and it doesn't feel like you're carrying around a lot with you. Next thing is the depth of field. Because it's a fast lens, that f-stop can really be brought down. You can really play with your photos. You can really create the image you want. And the big thing is, and the other big thing is robot eyes. It makes composition a lot easier. You get a composition pretty relative to what you saw with your eye. And the really big thing, you guys, is price. I've seen lenses up to $5,000 or $6,000. They're beautiful lenses, but as a beginner photographer, it's not viable for you to spend, you know, thousands of dollars on lenses as you're learning, as you're getting started. So the 50mm prime is a great way to get a really good, sharp, fast lens at a really, really good price. Especially because that old saying, and I've heard tons of photographers say this, the easiest way to make money in photography is to sell your equipment. And where that does hold some truth, learning to be a better photographer, pushing yourself, and going out and shooting, it's a lot easier when you're not worried about breaking the bank on a lens. So those are my reasons why every photographer should have a Nifty 50 lens in their kit. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I do have another video coming up this week. It is another big announcement from Jolly Look, as you remember from my last video, which I will link here. I got a sponsorship from Jolly Look. They launched their Kickstarter, and we're going to talk about that in a video later this week. So thank you guys again so much for joining me. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification so you guys know right when I'm going to upload, and you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.